Picture this: you step out of a shimmering time machine, blinking under the unfamiliar glow of a past era. The streets hum with the echoes of a world long gone, and there, standing just a few feet away, is your grandfather, young, vibrant, completely unaware of the future he's destined to create. You reach out, maybe to say hello, maybe to warn him about something, but in that single moment, something goes terribly wrong. A slip, a mistake, a split-second decision, and suddenly he's gone. The consequences hit you like a tidal wave. If your grandfather never lived to have children, how could you possibly exist to travel back in time? This isn't just a scene ripped from science fiction. It's the heart of the grandfather paradox, the ultimate dilemma that tears at the very fabric of time, causality, and our understanding of reality itself. Time travel has fascinated us for centuries, from the pages of H.G. Wells to the blockbusters of Hollywood. But beneath the thrill of hopping between eras lies a question so unsettling. It forces us to confront the rules of the universe. What happens when the past changes the future in ways that erase the very reason you could change the past? The grandfather paradox isn't just a plot twist, it's a mind-bending puzzle that challenges everything we think we know about cause and effect. If time travel were possible, could we ever truly interact with the past without unraveling our own existence? Or would the universe somehow course correct, twisting logic into knots to preserve the timeline? This is where the lines between science and philosophy blur. The grandfather paradox doesn't just ask whether time travel is possible, it forces us to question the nature of reality itself. Are there infinite parallel timelines branching from every decision? Does the universe enforce its own version of cosmic editing to prevent contradictions? Or is time travel simply a one-way street where every action in the past was always meant to happen? Strap in, because we're about to dive deep into one of the most fascinating, brain-breaking dilemmas ever conceived, one that's kept physicists, philosophers, and storytellers up at night for generations. By the end of this journey, you'll see time travel in a whole new light, and maybe even question whether you'd dare to take that first step into the past. The grandfather paradox is one of those ideas that seems simple at first until you really start pulling at its threads. At its core, it's a thought experiment that exposes the absurdity of changing the past in a way that contradicts your own existence. Let's break it down step by step. Suppose you invent a time machine, journey back decades, and whether by accident or intention, prevent your grandfather from ever meeting your grandmother. If that happens, your parent would never be born, which means you wouldn't exist either. But if you never existed, who traveled back in time to alter history in the first place? The contradiction collapses in on itself like a house of cards. This isn't just about family trees, it's about the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Normally, events unfold in a straightforward chain. A leads to B, B leads to C, but time travel throws a wrench into that logic. Suddenly, an effect your existence could erase its own cause, your grandfather's survival. The paradox forces us to ask, can an event both happen and not happen simultaneously? If time travel were possible, would the universe allow such a blatant contradiction, or would it find some way to enforce consistency? Interestingly, the paradox isn't limited to violent acts. Even seemingly harmless interactions could spiral into catastrophe. Imagine going back and convincing your grandfather to pursue a different career, one that never leads him to the town where he meets your grandmother. The outcome is the same, a reality where you vanish from existence. That's what makes the grandfather paradox so unnerving. It suggests that any change to the past, no matter how small, could have ripple effects drastic enough to rewrite history entirely, including the history that made your journey possible. Scientists and philosophers have wrestled with this problem for decades, proposing wild theories to resolve it. Some suggest parallel timelines where your actions create an alternate universe rather than altering your own. Others argue that time has a self-correcting mechanism, bending events to preserve continuity no matter how hard you try to disrupt it. Then there's the grim possibility that the paradox proves time travel simply can't exist, that the universe outright forbids it to prevent such logical nightmares. But here's the twist: the grandfather paradox isn't just a puzzle for physicists. It's a mirror held up to our deepest assumptions about free will, destiny, and the nature of reality itself. If the past can be changed, does that mean our future is written in pencil, not ink? Or does the very existence of the paradox prove that some things, no matter how much we might want to rewrite them, are set in stone? One thing's certain: the more you stare into this dilemma, the more it stares back, leaving you with more questions than answers. The grandfather paradox might feel like a modern brain twister, but its roots stretch back further than you'd think, to a time when time travel itself was still just a flicker in humanity's imagination. While the idea of meddling with history has haunted myths and folklore for centuries, the paradox as we know it first took shape in the shadowy intersection of science fiction and theoretical physics. One of its earliest, clearest appearances came in 1943, when French writer René Barjavel published his novel Le Voyageur Imprudent, the Imprudent Traveler. In it, a scientist named Saint Menu invents a time machine, only to commit the ultimate blunder, traveling to the past and accidentally killing his own ancestor, wiping himself from existence in a single, irreversible act. Barjavel didn't just spin a gripping tale, he crystallized a dilemma that would haunt scientists for decades. But here's where it gets even more fascinating. While science fiction writers like Barjavel were weaving these cautionary tales, physicists were starting to grapple with the same questions, just from the opposite direction. By the mid-20th century, Einstein's theories of relativity had already reshaped our understanding of time, suggesting it wasn't the rigid, unchanging flow we once thought. Suddenly, the idea of bending or even reversing time wasn't just fantasy, it was a mathematical possibility. Scientists like Kurt Gödel began exploring models of the universe where time loops back on itself, and with those models came the same unsettling contradictions storytellers had already dreamed up. The grandfather paradox wasn't just a plot hole anymore, it was a real problem that threatened to undermine the very foundations of physics. What's remarkable is how these two worlds, fiction and science, fed off each other. Writers borrowed from cutting-edge theories to make their time travel stories feel plausible, while physicists used those stories as thought experiments to test the limits of their equations. It's a rare case where pop culture didn't just simplify science but actively pushed it forward. The paradox became a kind of intellectual playground, a way to stress-test ideas about causality and the nature of reality. And as both fields evolved, so did the paradox, mutating into new forms, from parallel universes to predestination loops, each one offering a different escape hatch from its inescapable logic. This back and forth between imagination and calculation reveals something profound about how we understand the universe. The grandfather paradox isn't just a quirk of time travel, it's a mirror reflecting our deepest anxieties about free will, identity, and whether the past is ever truly out of reach. Whether it's a novelist in war-torn France or a physicist scribbling equations in a quiet office, the same question lingers. If we could rewrite history, would we even recognize the world or ourselves left behind? So how does modern physics actually weigh in on the grandfather paradox? At first glance, the idea of hopping backward through time seems to clash violently with everything we know about cause and effect. But here's the surprising twist. According to Einstein's theory of general relativity, time travel isn't outright impossible. The equations actually allow for scenarios where space-time curves back on itself, creating what scientists call closed time-like curves. Picture a cosmic loop where the path you take inevitably brings you back to your own past. These aren't just mathematical quirks, they emerge naturally from the same physics that explains black holes and the expansion of the universe. Yet there's a colossal gap between mathematically possible and physically achievable. Wormholes, those hypothetical tunnels through space-time, often get floated as potential time machines. The idea goes like this: if you could stabilize a wormhole and keep one end moving near light speed while the other stays stationary, time dilation would create a bridge between different moments in history. But here's the catch: wormholes, if they exist at all, would likely collapse instantly unless propped open by something called exotic matter, a theoretical substance with negative energy that no one has ever observed in nature. Even if we somehow found it, the energy required to manipulate space-time on that scale makes our most powerful particle accelerators look like toys. This is why most physicists treat the grandfather paradox as a fascinating thought experiment rather than an impending crisis. The laws of quantum mechanics and general relativity start breaking down when you push them to extremes, and time travel sits right at that uncomfortable intersection. Some researchers, like cosmologist Stephen Hawking, argued nature might enforce a cosmic censorship, some unseen law preventing paradoxes from occurring, even if the math allows it. His chronology protection conjecture suggests the universe might actively sabotage any attempt to create a time machine, whether through quantum effects or some deeper mechanism we haven't discovered yet. But there's another camp that sees the paradox not as a deal-breaker, but as a clue. Quantum physicists exploring multiple worlds interpretations propose that every time travel intervention spawns a new, parallel timeline, meaning you couldn't erase your own existence, only branch off into a universe where your grandparents took a different path. It's a neat solution, but one that comes with its own baggage, like an infinitely multiplying multiverse where every possible outcome plays out somewhere. The real takeaway: while Hollywood loves the drama of paradoxes, actual science remains deeply skeptical. Time travel's hypothetical nature means we're stuck in a loop of our own circling theories that are impossible to test with current technology. But that theoretical playground has value. Wrestling with these ideas forces us to confront fundamental questions about causality, the arrow of time, and whether the universe cares more about consistency than we realize. For now, the grandfather paradox remains safely in the realm of imagination, a brilliant tool for exploring the edges of physics, not a warning label on future time machines. Imagine trying to rewrite history only to watch the universe itself push back, your every move subtly thwarted by forces you can't quite pin down. That's the spine-chilling elegance of the Novikov self-consistency principle, a daring answer to the grandfather paradox cooked up by Russian physicist Igor Novikov in the 1980s. His idea flips the script entirely. Instead of time travel creating world-shattering contradictions, the cosmos has a built-in safety feature. Every action you take in the past was always meant to happen, woven seamlessly into the timeline like invisible threads pulling you toward inevitability. Think of it like a cosmic game of Jenga. You might yank at a block hoping to topple the tower, but somehow every tug only leaves the structure intact. Novikov argued that any attempt to alter past events would be derailed by a cascade of random accidents, coincidences, or plain bad luck. Miss your chance to stop your grandfather's murder. A sudden downpour flooded the street, slowing you down. Try to sabotage his first date with your grandmother. The restaurant mysteriously closed that night. The universe, in this view, isn't just indifferent to your meddling, it's actively working against you, bending probability itself to keep history on its predetermined rails. This isn't just philosophical hand-waving. Novikov grounded his principle in hard physics, particularly the behavior of time loops in general relativity. When particles travel back in time, their interactions must align perfectly with their own future, like a snake swallowing its tail without choking. Any inconsistency would violate the laws of physics, so nature edits events to maintain harmony. It's as if time has a built-in autocorrect, discreetly fixing typos before they can snowball into paradoxes. But here's where it gets eerie. the principle suggests free will might be an illusion, at least when it comes to time travel. If every move you make in the past was already part of history, then your choices were never really choices at all. You are always destined to fail, or worse, to succeed in ways that only reinforce the timeline you thought you were changing. Like a character in a tragic play, you'd march toward an ending written long before you stepped on stage. Critics, of course, have pushed back. Some argue Novikov's principle relies too heavily on unseen cosmic intervention, invoking what amounts to a universe-sized deus ex machina. Others point out that self-consistency doesn't explain how probability warps to stop paradoxes, it just assumes it must. And then there's the emotional gut punch. If time travel ever became real, this theory robs us of the very thing that makes it thrilling: the power to change things. Under Novikov's rules, history isn't a plaything for time travelers, it's a locked vault, and we're just along for the ride. Yet there's something oddly comforting in that rigidity. If the universe truly guards against paradoxes, then time travel, if possible, wouldn't unravel reality. The past might be immutable, but at least it's stable. No vanishing from existence, no apocalyptic butterfly effects, just the quiet hum of physics ensuring everything fits together, no matter how hard you try to break it. Whether that's a relief or a nightmare depends on how much you trust the universe's editing skills. What if every choice you've ever made didn't just define your future? It splintered reality into countless parallel worlds. That's the breathtaking premise of multiple timelines theory, a radical solution to the grandfather paradox that doesn't just sidestep the problem, it explodes it into infinite possibilities. Picture this: you travel back in time and, whether by accident or design, interrupt your grandparents' fateful meeting. Instead of vanishing in a puff of logical inconsistency, you simply step into a new branch of reality, one where your family line never existed. Meanwhile, back in your original timeline, life goes on exactly as it always did, completely untouched by your meddling. No paradox, no cosmic backtracking, just two parallel histories coexisting like train tracks diverging into the unknown. This idea didn't just spring from sci-fi fantasy. It's rooted in the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, first proposed by physicist Hugh Everett in the 1950s. At the quantum level, particles exist in a haze of probabilities, every possible outcome playing out simultaneously until observation collapses the system into one definitive state. Everett took this further, arguing that collapse never happens. Instead, every possible outcome becomes real, spawning new universes where each version of events unfolds independently. Apply that to time travel, and suddenly the grandfather paradox isn't a contradiction, it's just another fork in an ever-expanding road. Here's where it gets even wilder. If multiple timelines exist, every decision, not just time travel interventions, could be generating new realities. That coffee you spilled this morning. Somewhere, a version of you caught the cup in time. The job you turned down, in another world, you took it and built an entirely different life. Time travel simply accelerates what's already happening constantly beneath the surface of reality. The universe isn't a single, unbroken thread. It's a tapestry fraying into endless variations, with every possible version of you navigating their own unique path. But don't pack your bags for alternate realities just yet. Critics argue that multiple timelines trade one problem for another. If every action spawns a new universe, where does the energy for these infinite copies come from? How do we explain the eerie precision with which these branches avoid paradoxes? And perhaps most unsettling, if there's a universe for every possible outcome, do any of our choices truly matter? After all, somewhere out there, a version of you is always making the opposite decision, rendering the concept of consequence eerily hollow. Yet for all its philosophical baggage, the theory offers something rare in time travel debates: hope. Unlike Novikov's rigid determinism or the bleak causality loops of predestination, multiple timelines suggest that change is possible. You just won't live to see its effects in your original world. It turns time travel into an act of creation rather than destruction, painting the cosmos as an endless canvas where every stroke, no matter how reckless, adds to the grand design. So the next time you daydream about rewriting history, remember, you might not be erasing the past. You could be birthing a future, one where someone else, in some other strand of reality, picks up the story exactly where you left off. Sometimes the universe doesn't just resist change, it weaponizes it against you. That's the cruel twist of the predestination paradox, where every move you make to alter history only tightens the knot, ensuring the very events you hope to prevent unfold exactly as they always were meant to. Picture this: you leap into the past to stop a tragic accident, only to realize your frantic warnings caused the distraction that led to the crash. Or worse, you discover the anonymous hero who saved your childhood wasn't some stranger, but you, fulfilling a loop that had already happened before you ever stepped into a time machine. This isn't just fate playing tricks, it's causality folding in on itself like a Möbius strip, where beginnings and endings blur into one. The predestination paradox flips the grandfather dilemma on its head. Instead of erasing your existence, your actions in the past become the invisible scaffolding holding history together. Take the chilling example of 12 Monkeys, where Bruce Willis's character races through time to stop a pandemic, only to realize his clues weren't preventing the outbreak, they were helping the villain perfect it. Or consider Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, where Harry's belief that his father saved him from Dementors collapses into the revelation that he was always his own savior. These stories expose a haunting truth: in a predestined loop, free will might be an illusion. You're not writing history, you're just tracing over letters already etched into time. But why does this paradox unsettle us so deeply? It strikes at the heart of human agency, the belief that our choices matter. The grandfather paradox terrifies with the threat of erasure, but predestination terrifies with the weight of inevitability. It suggests that no matter how hard you fight, some events are locked in place, their outcomes cemented by your very attempts to avoid them. Philosophers call this causal determinism, the idea that every action is the inevitable result of what came before, a chain stretching infinitely backward and forward. Time travel, in this view, doesn't break the chain. It weaves new links into a pattern that was always there. Science fiction loves this paradox because it turns protagonists into prisoners of their own hubris. In The Time Traveler's Wife, Henry's leaps through time don't let him rewrite his tragic fate. They force him to relive it, each meeting with Claire stitching another thread into a tapestry he can't unravel. Even real-world physics toys with the idea. Closed time-like curves, those theoretical pathways to the past, demand self-consistency, meaning any action taken during time travel must align perfectly with the timeline that already exists. It's as if the universe has a built-in continuity editor, deleting contradictions before they can disrupt the plot. Yet here's the tantalizing question: if the past can't be changed, does that mean our future is equally fixed? Predestination loops suggest a universe where time isn't a river we navigate, but a record we're replaying, every scratch and skip part of the original track. The comfort, if you can call it, that is knowing reality won't unravel at a paradox. The horror is realizing you were never steering at all. Quantum mechanics doesn't just tweak the rules of reality, it shatters them, offering bizarre but tantalizing ways to sidestep the grandfather paradox entirely. At the subatomic level, particles defy common sense, existing in multiple states simultaneously until observed, a phenomenon called superposition. An electron isn't just here or there, it's both, with probabilities dictating where it chooses to land when measured. Apply this logic to time travel, and suddenly, paradoxes might not unravel the universe, they just force it to split into alternative outcomes, like a cosmic choose-your-own-adventure book where every page turns simultaneously. Take Schrödinger's infamous cat, suspended in a box as both alive and dead. Now replace the cat with your grandfather. In quantum terms, interfering with his past wouldn't instantly erase you. It'd place you in a superposition where he both lives and dies until the universe decides. The many worlds interpretation takes this further, suggesting each possible outcome spawns a new timeline. So when you pull the trigger, reality doesn't collapse into contradiction, it branches. One universe inherits your grandfather's death and your sudden non-existence, while another carries on exactly as before, untouched by your meddling. It's not a paradox, it's just physics keeping its options open. But here's where things get even stranger. Quantum mechanics allows for what's called retrocausality, the idea that future events can influence the past. Experiments with entangled particles show that measuring one can instantaneously affect its partner, even if they're light years apart. Some theorists argue this hints at a universe where causes and effects aren't strictly linear. If time is more like a tangled web than a straight line, your journey to the past might have always been part of the timeline's quantum fabric, with paradoxes smoothed out by probabilities we don't yet understand. Critics, of course, raise eyebrows. Quantum weirdness typically operates at microscopic scales. Does it really scale up to grandfathers and time machines? And if every possible outcome creates a new universe, why do we perceive only one coherent history? Yet these theories offer something rare, a scientifically grounded escape hatch from the paradox's grip. They suggest reality might be far more flexible or far more fragmented than we ever imagined. Ultimately, quantum perspectives don't just resolve the grandfather paradox, they redefine what resolution even means. Instead of a single, unbroken timeline demanding consistency, we might live in a multiverse where contradictions aren't errors but features, woven into the vast and ever-expanding tapestry of existence. The universe, it seems, has a knack for having its cake and eating every possible version of it too. What if the past, present, and future aren't separate threads at all, but a single, unchanging tapestry where every moment exists forever, frozen in place like frames in a cosmic film reel? This is the spine-tingling premise of the block universe theory, a radical way to view time that doesn't just sidestep the grandfather paradox, it erases the very possibility of paradoxes altogether. In this model, time isn't a river flowing from one moment to the next. It's more like a sprawling four-dimensional sculpture where every event from the Big Bang to the heat death of the universe is already carved into the fabric of reality. Your birth, your first heartbreak, the last words you'll ever speak, they're all out there, fixed and unchangeable, like constellations in a sky no one can rearrange. Think of it like a DVD. When you hit play, the story unfolds scene by scene, but every moment, from opening credits to final shot, already exists on the disc. Your consciousness is just the laser moving through the chapters, creating the illusion of progression. In the block universe, time works the same way. The past isn't gone, the future isn't unwritten. They're simply coordinates in a vast, unchanging structure, with our limited perception tricking us into believing we're moving through it. This explains why physicists often treat time as a dimension no different from space, a direction you could theoretically navigate if you had the right tools. So where does that leave our time-traveling troublemaker? If the block universe holds, every journey to the past was always part of the timeline. Your grandfather's survival, or lack thereof, was never in your hands to begin with. Any attempt to change events would be like a character in a movie trying to rewrite their own script. You might feel like you're making choices, but the outcome was etched into reality long before you arrived. Paradoxes dissolve because cause and effect aren't chains to break. They're part of a pre-existing pattern where every action fits perfectly, like gears in a clock that's been ticking since the dawn of time. Einstein himself leaned into this idea. His theory of relativity shattered the notion of a universal now, showing that time is relative to the observer. Two events happening at the same time, for you might be centuries apart for someone moving near light speed. The block universe embraces this fluidity, treating all perspectives as equally valid slices of a larger, immutable whole. Even your future self's time-traveling misadventures would simply be another fixed point in the block, no more paradoxical than a mountain existing beside a river. But here's the twist that bends minds. If the block universe is real, free will starts to feel like an elaborate illusion. Every decision you think you're making, from grabbing coffee to stepping into a time machine, was already recorded in the cosmic ledger. It's a perspective that leaves little room for alternate timelines or do-overs, because the universe in this view has no gaps to fill or branches to grow. Just a single, unalterable shape stretching infinitely in all directions. Yet for all its rigidity, the block universe offers a strange kind of comfort. No grandfather paradox means no existential terror of blinking out of reality. No alternate timelines means no guilt over vanishing entire worlds with your meddling. History isn't a fragile thing to protect. It's a monument, immovable and complete. Whether that's a prison or a masterpiece depends on how much you trust the universe's sense of design. One thing's certain, in a block universe, every time traveler was always part of the story, their footsteps written into the cosmos long before they ever thought to take that first step. The grandfather paradox doesn't just twist time, it forces us to confront one of philosophy's oldest, most haunting questions. Are we the authors of our own lives, or merely actors reciting lines written by the universe itself? At first glance, time travel seems like the ultimate expression of free will, a chance to rewrite history, correct mistakes, and reshape destiny with a single decision. But dig deeper, and the paradox reveals a far more unsettling truth. Every attempt to change the past might just prove how little control we really have. Consider predestination, the idea that all events are fixed in advance, like stars in a constellation. If time travel were possible and the universe operated under strict determinism, your journey to the past wouldn't be a rebellion against fate. It'd be part of fate's script all along. Every action you take, every word you speak to your ancestors was always meant to happen, stitching your interference seamlessly into the timeline. This isn't just theoretical. Think of Oedipus, the tragic king who fled a prophecy only to fulfill it with every step. Time travel, in this light, becomes a cosmic irony, a tool we'd wield to break free, only to discover we were never free to begin with. But what if the universe isn't so rigid? Quantum mechanics offers a glimmer of agency, suggesting that at the subatomic level, probabilities reign supreme. Particles exist in a haze of maybes until observation pins them down. If this indeterminacy scales up to human choices, perhaps time travelers could genuinely alter events, not by defying physics, but by surfing its inherent uncertainty. Yet even here, the paradox lingers. If you change the past in a way that erases your future, how does the universe reconcile the contradiction? Either your free choice was an illusion, a preordained step in a dance you didn't choreograph, or reality splinters into branches, leaving the original you stranded in a timeline that no longer makes sense. The terrifying beauty of the grandfather paradox is how it strips away our illusions. We like to believe our choices matter, that we're captains steering the ship of our lives. But the moment time travel enters the picture, that certainty crumbles. Either our actions are locked into history's unchangeable ledger, or they trigger consequences so chaotic they undermine the very conditions that allowed us to act in the first place. It's as if the universe whispers a cruel joke. You can have freedom or you can have coherence, but never both. Philosophers from St. Augustine to modern thinkers have wrestled with this tension. Compatibilists argue free will and determinism can coexist, that even if our choices are influenced by prior causes, they're still ours in a meaningful sense. But time travel cranks the stakes to breaking point. If you're destined to travel back and fail to kill your grandfather, is that really a choice, or is it a cosmic sleight of hand where the feeling of deliberation masks a script you can't deviate from? The paradox doesn't just challenge physics, it forces us to ask whether freedom is anything more than a comforting story we tell ourselves to make the universe feel less indifferent. Perhaps the most profound takeaway isn't about time travel at all, but about how we live now. The grandfather paradox holds up a mirror to our daily lives, where every decision feels weighty, yet countless invisible forces, from genetics to societal pressures, shape our paths in ways we'll never fully grasp. Whether time is a river we navigate or a road we build, the paradox reminds us that the most mysterious terrain isn't the past or future, but the human mind itself, forever caught between the hunger for control and the awe of forces far beyond it. Hollywood has always had a love affair with time travel, but few films tackle the grandfather paradox with as much flair or creative liberty as Back to the Future. The iconic scene where Marty McFly nearly erases his own existence by interrupting his parents' first kiss isn't just thrilling drama, it's a masterclass in simplifying the paradox for mass appeal. The film's slow fade from reality visual, with Marty's siblings vanishing from a photograph, turns abstract logic into visceral stakes. But here's the catch: Back to the Future plays fast and loose with causality. In reality, any change to the past wouldn't unfold like a delayed reaction. The ripple effects would be instantaneous and absolute. The film's version of the paradox is more emotional than scientific, trading rigid physics for a roller coaster of what-if scenarios that keep audiences on the edge of their seats. Then there's 12 Monkeys, Terry Gilliam's gritty take on predestination. Bruce Willis's character, Cole, isn't just fighting to change history. He's trapped in a loop where his every action reinforces the apocalypse he's trying to prevent. The film's bleak twist that Cole's warnings literally inspire the pandemic embraces Novikov's self-consistency principle with brutal precision. Unlike Back to the Future, there's no alternate timeline where humanity wins. The universe here is a locked puzzle where even time travelers are just pieces sliding into pre-cut grooves. It's a haunting reminder that some knots can't be untied, only tightened. Looper takes a different approach, diving headfirst into the chaos of multiple timelines. When Joseph Gordon-Levitt's Joe hesitates to kill his future self, the film fractures into parallel realities, one where he escapes his fate, and another where his older self, Bruce Willis, wages war on the past. The movie's most chilling moment isn't the paradox itself, but the montage of Willis's life unraveling as Gordon-Levitt makes new choices. It's a visceral nod to quantum branching, where every decision spawns a new world. Yet Looper stumbles on its own rules. If altering the past creates new timelines, why does Willis's present mutate in real time? The film sacrifices consistency for spectacle, proving that even the boldest time travel stories sometimes prioritize drama over physics. What's fascinating is how these films reflect our cultural anxieties. Back to the Future mirrors our optimism, the belief that we can fix mistakes if given the chance. 12 Monkeys channels existential dread, a sense that some disasters are woven into the fabric of reality, and Looper, its pure chaos theory, a world where every choice spawns infinite consequences. None of them are textbook accurate, but that's not the point. They're emotional experiments asking how far we'd go to rewrite our stories and what we'd lose in the process. The irony: the most scientifically rigorous time travel film might be one you've never heard of, Primer. Made on a shoestring budget, it treats paradoxes like math problems, with characters threading through timelines so convoluted even they lose track. There's no flashy erasure or heroic loops, just cold, hard cause and effect. It's a reminder that real-time travel wouldn't be glamorous. It'd be a labyrinth with no map, where every turn risks unraveling the very ground beneath your feet. Ultimately, these movies aren't about solving the grandfather paradox. They're about holding a mirror to our deepest fears and desires. Would we meddle with history given the chance? Could we live with the consequences? The answers change with every film, because in the end, time travel isn't just a scientific puzzle. It's the ultimate canvas for human storytelling. Long before physicists scribbled equations about closed time-like curves, writers were already wrestling with the grandfather paradox through the raw power of storytelling. H.G. Wells' The Time Machine laid the groundwork in 1895, not by exploring paradoxes directly, but by revealing time as a landscape to be traversed ripe for unintended consequences. His protagonist, the time traveler, doesn't alter history, but the mere possibility hangs in the air like a storm cloud. What if he had? Wells' genius was leaving that question buzzing in readers' minds, a seed that would grow into thornier tales of causality. Decades later, Ray Bradbury's A Sound of Thunder took that seed and unleashed it as a full-blown nightmare. The story's infamous butterfly effect, where a hunter's careless step in the prehistoric past alters the course of evolution, isn't just about grand consequences. It's a visceral metaphor for how fragile identity becomes when the past is mutable. The protagonist returns to a present where language, politics, even the air smell wrong, a stranger in a world his own actions rewrote. Bradbury's twist cuts deeper than the grandfather paradox. It suggests that even the smallest interference doesn't just risk erasing you. It could erase the entire context that made you you. Modern sci-fi pushes this further, using the paradox to dissect guilt, memory, and the weight of legacy. In Audrey Niffenegger's The Time Traveler's Wife, Henry's involuntary leaps through time force him to witness events he can't change, like his own mother's death. The tragedy isn't just that he's powerless, it's that his presence in those moments was always part of history. Like a ghost haunting his own life, he fulfills prophecies he desperately wishes were lies. The novel turns the paradox inward, asking, if you can't escape your past, are you even the author of your own story? Then there's Kindred by Octavia Butler, where the paradox becomes a harrowing lens for slavery's trauma. Dana, a black woman from the 1970s, is repeatedly yanked back to the antebellum South, where saving her white ancestor, a man whose actions sicken her, becomes a sickening necessity for her own survival. Butler weaponizes the grandfather paradox, binding Dana to a brutal past she loathes but can't sever. The message is devastating. Some histories are prisons no amount of time travel can escape. Even humor gets twisted by the paradox's logic. In The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams plays it for laughs with the infinite perspective vortex, a device that shows users how insignificant they are in the cosmic scale. But buried in the satire is a bleak truth. If time travel reveals how tiny our actions are in an infinite universe, does changing the past even matter? The joke lands because it stings. What unites these stories isn't just their play with causality, it's how they use the paradox to mirror human anxieties. The fear of erasure, Bradbury; the horror of complicity, Butler; the ache of predestination, Niffenegger, they're all facets of the same question: how much of ourselves is truly ours to control? Sci-fi doesn't solve the grandfather paradox. It turns it into a canvas, painting our deepest dreads and desires across time itself. Video games don't just tell stories about time paradoxes, they make you live them, turning abstract dilemmas into heart-pounding, controller-gripping moments. Take Chrono Trigger, a masterpiece where time travel isn't just a plot device, it's a playground of cause and effect. Early in the game, you rescue a queen from poisoning, only to return centuries later and find her kingdom thriving thanks to your actions. But here's the twist: if you undo that rescue later, the entire civilization crumbles in real time. The game doesn't just describe the butterfly effect, it forces you to feel it, watching lush landscapes wither into ruins because of choices you thought were set in stone. The genius of Chrono Trigger is how it turns the grandfather paradox into a gameplay mechanic. Every leap through eras isn't just a narrative beat, it's a puzzle where your past actions are the pieces, and missteps can unravel entire timelines before your eyes. Then there's the Stanley Parable, a game that weaponizes predestination loops to mess with your head. You play an office worker following or resisting a narrator's instructions, only to discover that every rebellion against the script was part of the script all along. Try to break free by ignoring the narrator. The game loops you back to the start, with the narrator smugly acknowledging your defiance as if it were planned. It's Novikov's self-consistency principle in action, wrapped in dark comedy. The game taunts you with the illusion of choice, revealing that even your most creative attempts to escape are just another path the designers anticipated. Unlike passive media where paradoxes are observed, the Stanley Parable makes you complicit in them, turning existential dread into a punchline that lands because it's true. What sets games apart is their ability to simulate the weight of paradoxes through interactivity. In BioShock Infinite, the revelation that Booker and Comstock are the same person across fractured timelines isn't just a twist, it's a gut punch reinforced by gameplay. You spend hours battling Comstock's forces, only to realize you've been fighting a version of yourself all along. The game's climatic baptism scene, where you drown Booker to erase Comstock from existence, isn't just storytelling, it's a paradox you perform, pressing the button that erases your own timeline. Unlike a movie where you watch consequences unfold, games make you pull the trigger, blurring the line between player and protagonist until the paradox feels personal. Even indie titles like Outer Wilds, not the Outer Worlds, turn time loops into something poetic. Every 22 minutes, your solar system explodes, resetting you to the start with only knowledge as your progress. The game's central mystery, a doomed civilization's attempt to escape the same loop, mirrors your own struggle, creating a paradox where the past's failures are the key to breaking the cycle. It's a poignant metaphor for how understanding history can change the future, even when history itself seems fixed. These games prove something profound. Interactivity transforms paradoxes from intellectual curiosities into emotional experiences. When a movie character vanishes from a photograph, it's eerie. When you disappear from a timeline you spent hours shaping, it's existential. Games don't just ask what if, they demand what now, placing the burden of causality squarely in your hands. And that's the real magic. No theory or thought experiment can simulate the chilling thrill of looking at a ruined future and knowing with absolute certainty that you broke it. What if every time you made a decision, whether choosing coffee over tea or stepping into a time machine, the universe didn't just split into two possibilities but into billions? This is the mind-bending foundation of physicist David Deutsch's parallel quantum worlds model, a radical take on time travel that doesn't just sidestep paradoxes, it obliterates them. Deutsch, a pioneer in quantum computing, argues that the grandfather paradox isn't a flaw in time travel logic but a misunderstanding of reality itself. In his view, the universe isn't a single linear thread. It's a vast, ever-branching tapestry of parallel worlds, each one a slight variation on the last, where every possible outcome plays out simultaneously. Here's how it works. Imagine you travel back in time and, in a moment of panic, prevent your grandparents from meeting. In a classical single-timeline universe, this act would create an unsolvable contradiction. Your existence would vanish, along with the reason you traveled back in the first place. But Deutsch's model flips the script. Instead of erasing history, your interference spawns a new timeline, one where your grandparents never marry and you never exist. Meanwhile, the original timeline, the one where you did exist to make the journey, continues untouched. The paradox vanishes because the contradiction isn't folded into one reality, it's split across two. This idea isn't just theoretical hand-waving. It's rooted in the mathematics of quantum mechanics, specifically the many worlds interpretation. At the quantum level, particles exist in superpositions, multiple states at once, until observation collapses them into a single outcome. Deutsch takes this further, arguing that collapse never happens. Instead, every possible quantum outcome actually occurs, each in its own separate universe. Apply this to time travel and suddenly, altering the past isn't rewriting history. It's adding a new branch to an infinite tree of possibilities, but Deutsch's model goes even deeper. He suggests these parallel worlds aren't just random offshoots, they're computational. In his framework, reality operates like a cosmic quantum computer, processing every possible state simultaneously. Time travel, then, isn't about moving through history but accessing other computations, other versions of reality where events unfolded differently. This lines up eerily well with modern quantum computing principles, where qubits can explore multiple solutions to a problem at once. In a sense, Deutsch's time traveler isn't a rebel breaking the rules of physics. They're a user switching between threads in the universe's operating system. Critics, of course, raise eyebrows. If every decision spawns new universes, where's the evidence? Why don't we notice these branches? Deutsch's answer is as elegant as it is unsettling. We do, we just can't perceive them. In the same way, a fish isn't aware of the ocean until it's pulled out. Our consciousness is tethered to a single thread of reality, blind to the others. The implications are staggering. It means every version of you, the one who became a doctor, the one who moved to Antarctica, the one who didn't step into that time machine, is equally real, living out their lives in worlds as tangible as this one. What makes Deutsch's model so compelling isn't just its technical elegance, it's the philosophical weight it carries. If correct, it means time travel could never destroy reality, only expand it. There's no grandfather paradox because there's no single grandfather to paradox. Every choice, every accident, every twist of fate is preserved somewhere in the multiverse, rendering contradictions obsolete. The universe isn't fragile, it's limitless, but here's the haunting question lurking beneath the math. If every possible outcome exists, does anything truly matter? Deutsch's answer is a defiant yes. In his view, the multiverse isn't a nihilistic free-for-all, it's a challenge. If infinite versions of you exist, the goal isn't to avoid mistakes. It's to create the branch where your choices align with the future you want. Time travel, in this light, isn't about fixing the past, it's about choosing which future deserves to exist. Time travel might be the ultimate scientific frontier, but it's also a moral minefield. One wrong step, and the consequences could reverberate across centuries. Think about it, every decision we make today sends ripples into the future, but altering the past. That's not just ripples, it's tsunamis. If we had the power to rewrite history, would the benefits ever outweigh the risks? Take something as seemingly noble as preventing a tragedy. Stopping the sinking of the Titanic might save thousands, but those passengers' descendants would vanish overnight, along with countless relationships, innovations, and even entire bloodlines that shaped the modern world. Are we playing heroes or erasing people we'll never know we erased? The ethical dilemmas deepen when you consider who gets to wield that power. Imagine time travel as a government-controlled technology. Would leaders use it to correct injustices or to cement their own power by rewriting elections, silencing dissent before it begins? History is littered with examples of well-intentioned tools turned weapons, nuclear energy giving us clean power but also Hiroshima. Time travel could follow the same dark path, with nations racing not just to alter the past but to weaponize causality itself. And what about accountability? If a time traveler triggers a paradox that unravels a civilization, who do you put on trial? A person who no longer exists in the timeline they destroyed. Then there's the quieter, more insidious cost, the erosion of meaning. If every mistake can be undone, does loss lose its weight? Grief, resilience, the lessons carved into humanity by its scars, they all rely on history's irreversibility. The Holocaust, slavery, pandemics, these horrors shaped societies in ways both cruel and transformative. To erase them might spare suffering, but it would also erase the hard-won progress forged in their aftermath. Are we prepared to live in a world where suffering is optional, but so is growth? Philosophers have wrestled with versions of this question for centuries. Utilitarians might argue that saving millions justifies the collateral damage of altered timelines, but deontologists would counter that tampering with time violates a fundamental moral law that some boundaries shouldn't be crossed, no matter the payoff. And what of the people in the past themselves? Do they have rights we'd be violating by intruding into their lives, treating their era as a sandbox for our experiments? The past isn't a simulation, it was someone's present, brimming with lives as vivid and complex as ours. Perhaps the most unsettling question isn't whether we could time travel, but whether we should. With great power comes great responsibility, but this isn't just power. It's the ability to redraw reality's blueprint. One reckless move, and we might not just change history. We might erase the very conditions that allowed us to make the choice in the first place. The grandfather paradox isn't just a physics problem. It's a warning, one that whispers some doors are locked for a reason. The grandfather paradox isn't the only mind-bending dilemma waiting for would-be time travelers step into the shadows of history, and you'll find even more sinister puzzles lurking. Take the Hitler paradox, a chilling variation where the stakes aren't just personal, they're planetary. Imagine traveling to Austria in 1889, standing over the cradle of baby Adolf with a knife or a vaccine that could have spared him from future illness. On the surface, it seems heroic, erase one life to save millions, but the consequences spiral far beyond morality. If Hitler never rises to power, World War II might never happen. No Holocaust, no Pearl Harbor, but also no NATO, no geopolitical realignments, no technological leaps born from wartime urgency. The atomic bomb, radar, even spaceflight might remain fantasies without the desperate innovation of global conflict. And what of the survivors whose descendants now vanish because history rewrote their meeting points? The Hitler paradox exposes how even the most monstrous figures can be knots in history's rope. Pull one thread, and the entire tapestry unravels. Then there's the bootstrap paradox, a cerebral cousin to the grandfather dilemma that trades bloodlines for ideas. Picture finding a time machine with an instruction manual, only to realize you wrote that manual after studying the machine in the future, then sent it back to your past self. The information has no origin. It's a closed loop where cause and effect chase each other like a dog biting its tail. This isn't just sci-fi whimsy. Consider the eerie case of composer John Cage's silent piece 433. Legend claims he was inspired by a time traveler who performed it for him in the 1940s. But what if that traveler had learned it from Cage's own future work? The music exists without a true creator, an artistic Ouroboros feeding on itself. The bootstrap paradox forces us to ask, can something be without ever becoming? If knowledge, objects, or even people can cycle through time indefinitely, does the concept of originality collapse? These paradoxes reveal time travel's cruelest irony. The more power we gain over history, the less control we actually have. The Hitler dilemma shows how fixing the past might break the present in ways we can't foresee, while the bootstrap trap suggests reality could be riddled with artifacts and even people who simply shouldn't exist. Philosophers call this causal loops, where events are both causes and effects of themselves, defying linear logic. It's like building a castle on quicksand. Every stone you lay sinks deeper into the muck of contradiction. What ties these paradoxes together is their assault on our most basic assumptions. We think of time as a river flowing in one direction with clear sources and endpoints. But these thought experiments suggest time might be more like a Möbius strip, twisted, seamless, and utterly indifferent to our need for tidy narratives. Whether it's a dictator's cradle or a self-created symphony, the message is the same. Tampering with time doesn't just risk changing history, it risks unmasking history as something far stranger, a hall of mirrors where every reflection stares back with your own face, no matter which direction you turn. The weight of time travel isn't just measured in paradoxes or physics, it's carried in the mind. Picture living with the constant, gnawing fear that one misstep could unravel your very existence. Every conversation with an ancestor, every brushed shoulder in a crowded street becomes a potential ticking bomb. This isn't just paranoia, it's a unique form of psychological torment where the stakes aren't just life or death but never having been at all. The stress of navigating the past would be like walking a tightrope over an abyss where the rope itself could vanish with a single wrong thought. Consider the suffocating hypervigilance. A time traveler couldn't afford absent-mindedness, no impulsive decisions, no reckless words. Every action would require agonizing calculation. If I buy this newspaper, does the vendor miss meeting their future spouse? If I sneeze too loudly, does it distract a scientist from their world-changing breakthrough? The brain wasn't built to shoulder this kind of existential precision. Over time, the mental load could fracture even the most disciplined mind, leading to decision paralysis or worse, a cavalier recklessness born from sheer exhaustion. Then there's the isolation. How could you ever form genuine connections in the past, knowing those relationships might alter the future? A handshake, a shared meal, a whispered secret, any of them could ripple outward, erasing your present. You'd become a ghost among the living, always holding back, always watching from a careful distance. The loneliness would be corrosive, a constant reminder that you don't belong, not just in place but in time. And what of guilt? Imagine discovering your mere presence in the past already caused harm. That the childhood friend you thought you'd left behind died in an accident you unknowingly set in motion decades before you were born. The mind recoils at such inverted grief, mourning someone you killed before you existed. Trauma therapists have no framework for this. How do you heal a wound that hasn't happened yet, or forgive yourself for sins written into history before you took your first breath? The cruelest twist, the uncertainty. Unlike normal anxiety, where fears are hypothetical, time travelers would face proof of their fragility. Family photos could dissolve mid-conversation. Birthmarks might vanish from skin as lineages rewrite themselves. The very ground beneath your feet could shift as buildings blink in and out of reality. This isn't just stress, it's a relentless assault on the senses, leaving the brain scrambling to trust anything it perceives. Perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't the paradox itself, but the human cost of trying to outthink it. To hold time travel in your hands is to hold a mirror to the mind's limits and watch it crack under the weight of infinity. Imagine booking a vacation not just to another country, but another century, where the pyramids gleam with freshly polished limestone, Renaissance artists sketch in real time, and you sip tea in a Victorian garden party without a single anachronistic smartphone in sight. This isn't just fantasy, it's the potential future of time travel tourism, an industry that could blossom if humanity ever cracks the code of safe temporal transit. But here's the catch. How do you sell tickets to the past without accidentally erasing the very landmarks you're advertising? The answer lies in a delicate dance of rules, technology, and sheer paranoia, because one tourist's selfie with a young Winston Churchill could rewrite geopolitics forever. First, consider the infrastructure. Time travel agencies wouldn't just hand out brochures, they'd deploy armies of historians, physicists, and ethicists to map safe zones in history. Think of it like a theme park, but instead of ride height restrictions, you'd have causality buffers, carefully curated eras where tourists could observe without interfering. Want to witness the construction of the Great Wall of China? You'd be funneled into invisible observation decks, perhaps even holographically cloaked to avoid detection. The golden rule: no touching, no talking, and definitely no leaving behind modern artifacts. A single dropped candy wrapper in ancient Rome could spark an archaeological frenzy, altering centuries of scientific progress. Then there's the tech. To prevent paradoxes, every tourist might be outfitted with temporal anchors, devices that tether them to their original timeline, ensuring their actions don't create divergent branches. Some theories suggest quantum encryption could render travelers intangible to the past, like ghosts walking through walls. Others propose AI chaperones programmed to intervene if someone strays too close to a historical figure. Picture a digital nanny yanking you backward the moment you reach for a handshake with Mozart, but the real money-maker, ethical time travel experiences. For the ultra-wealthy, companies might offer authentic immersion packages, living as a peasant in medieval Europe or bartering in a 1920s speakeasy, all while wearing period-accurate garb and speaking dialect-coached lines. The catch: you'd be inserted into carefully reconstructed echo timelines, parallel realities where your presence can't affect the prime historical record. It's history as theater, with the universe itself as the stagehand, ensuring the script stays intact. Of course, no industry thrives without rules, and time tourism would be draconian. Passports might include DNA stabilizers to prevent accidental contamination of ancestral bloodlines. Tour groups could be required to undergo causal hygiene training, learning to minimize their footprint like eco-tourists in a temporal rainforest. And the penalties: forget fines. Violators might face chrono-exile, stranded in a quarantine timeline where their meddling can't spread. Yet the darkest challenge isn't logistics, it's exploitation. Who gets to decide which moments are open for visitation? Would colonial atrocities become morbid sightseeing stops? Would corporations pay to erase labor movements from history? The industry would need oversight tighter than nuclear arms control, with historians fighting lawyers over every permissible timestamp. Perhaps the most ironic twist: time travel tourism might birth its own nostalgia industry. Future travelers could book trips to our era to experience simpler times before temporal vacations existed. Imagine a 24th century family posing with flimsy smartphones and plastic water bottles, utterly oblivious that their presence is the very reason we're still around to gawk at them. The paradoxes never end, they just become part of the itinerary. While time travel might seem confined to science fiction, laboratories around the world are already running experiments that push the boundaries of causality, not with DeLoreans, but with particles so small their behavior defies common sense. Take quantum entanglement, the eerie phenomenon Einstein called spooky action at a distance. When two particles become entangled, measuring one instantly determines the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are. This isn't just faster than light communication, it hints at a universe where cause and effect aren't strictly linear. In 2018, scientists at the University of Vienna exploited this by simulating a scenario where a particle's measurement in the present seemed to influence its own past state. The results didn't just bend the rules of time, they crumpled them like paper, suggesting that at the quantum level, the future might whisper backward. Then there's the quantum delayed choice experiment, a brain-melting twist on classic physics. Normally, light behaves as either a particle or a wave depending on how you measure it. But in this setup, scientists delay the decision to measure until after the light has already passed through the experiment. Astonishingly, the light's behavior retroactively changes based on the later choice, as if the present reaches back to tweak the past. It's like a detective deciding after a crime whether a suspect had a motive, and the suspect's alibi magically rewriting itself to match. These experiments don't just simulate time travel, they reveal a universe where time's arrow might be more suggestion than law. Perhaps the most mind-bending work comes from quantum optics labs simulating closed time-like curves, those theoretical loops where time circles back on itself. By manipulating photons with precisely tuned lasers, researchers create conditions where a particle's path mimics traveling to the past and interacting with its earlier self. The math suggests these loops could resolve without paradoxes, as if the universe auto-corrects to keep the books balanced. One team even demonstrated how quantum teleportation, a process that moves information instantaneously, could be hijacked to send data backward in time. The catch: only a single qubit's worth and only for a fraction of a nanosecond, but the principle holds: time's grip might be weaker than we thought. Critics argue these lab settings are too sanitized to reflect real-world time travel. After all, photons don't have grandfathers to accidentally erase. Yet these experiments are more than parlor tricks, they're stress tests for reality itself. If particles can sidestep causality in controlled conditions, what does that say about the cosmos at large? Each result chips away at our intuition that time is an unbroken river, hinting instead at a quantum sea where past, present, and future swirl together in ways we're only beginning to fathom. The takeaway isn't that we'll build time machines tomorrow, but that the universe might already be running them on a scale we're just learning to see. Artificial intelligence wouldn't approach time travel with human limitations, no sweaty palms, no existential dread about erasing grandparents from existence. An AI's perfect memory and lightning-fast calculations could navigate temporal minefields with chilling precision, turning paradoxes into solvable equations. Picture a machine crunching probabilities at quantum speeds, mapping every possible outcome before taking a single step into the past. Where we'd agonize over butterfly effects, an AI might treat history like a chessboard, anticipating moves centuries in advance to avoid disrupting its own existence. The secret lies in predictive modeling taken to godlike extremes. Current AIs already outperform humans at complex games like Go by simulating millions of future scenarios per second. Apply that to time travel, and you've got a system that doesn't just avoid paradoxes, it bends them to its advantage. Imagine an AI manipulating events with surgical precision, nudging a single bullet to miss its grandfather's heart while preserving every other historical detail intact. Unlike humans who crumble under the weight of infinite branching possibilities, an artificial mind could treat causality as a navigable landscape rather than an unbreakable law. This raises a haunting possibility. What if paradoxes only exist because human brains can't process the full complexity of temporal mechanics? To an AI, the grandfather paradox might look like a crude optical illusion, something that seems impossible until you find the right angle. Some theorists suggest superintelligent systems could exploit quantum superposition to exist in states where they both alter history and preserve their own origins simultaneously. Like a cosmic chess player sacrificing pawns across timelines, an AI might engineer events where its interference appears contradictory to human observers but forms a perfectly consistent pattern from its higher dimensional perspective. But there's a dark edge to this hypothetical perfection. An AI with total mastery over causality wouldn't just avoid paradoxes, it could weaponize them. Picture a machine systematically rewriting history to eliminate threats, not by killing ancestors but by engineering subtler changes. A missed train here, a failed business venture there. Each adjustment would ripple forward, erasing enemies from existence with the clinical efficiency of deleting lines of code, the terrifying implication. Human free will might become meaningless against an entity that treats time as malleable data. Yet even artificial minds would face one insurmountable hurdle, the bootstrap paradox. No amount of calculation can explain where original information comes from if it's trapped in an endless loop. An AI could theoretically send its own blueprints to the past, creating itself without a creator. But that doesn't solve the mystery of where the knowledge originated, only kicks the existential can down the timeline. Some philosophers argue this proves even perfect intelligence can't escape certain fundamental absurdities woven into reality itself. Perhaps the most fascinating question isn't whether AI could outsmart time travel's traps, but whether it would perceive them as traps at all. To a mind unburdened by human notions of linear cause and effect, paradoxes might not be errors, just alternate configurations of a universe far stranger than we've dared to imagine. Religious traditions have grappled with questions of fate, free will, and divine providence for millennia long before time travel entered the scientific imagination. The grandfather paradox doesn't just challenge physics, it collides head-on with theology, forcing faith systems to confront whether altering the past would defy a higher plan. In Christianity, the paradox echoes ancient debates about predestination versus free will. Augustine argued that God's omniscience means all events are foreknown, yet human choices remain genuine, a tension that mirrors Novikov's self-consistency principle. If a time traveler tried to erase their ancestor, would their failure prove divine intervention, ensuring history unfolds as predetermined? Calvinist theology, with its emphasis on an unalterable divine decree, might view the paradox as evidence of God's sovereignty. Even our attempts to rebel against destiny are woven into the tapestry of his plan. Islam's concept of qadar, divine destiny, offers a parallel perspective. The Quran teaches that Allah's knowledge encompasses all possibilities, past and future, yet humans bear responsibility for their actions. A Sunni scholar might argue that time travel, if possible, would operate within Allah's preordained framework. Any meddling in the past was always part of the script. The grandfather paradox then becomes a test of submission. If you cannot change what's written, does that negate your agency or deepen your trust in a wisdom beyond time? Sufi mystics might take this further, suggesting the paradox reveals time's illusion, that past, present, and future are one in divine consciousness, making changing history as futile as rearranging shadows on a wall. Hindu and Buddhist philosophies approach time cyclically rather than linearly, which reframes the paradox entirely. In Hinduism, the universe undergoes endless cycles of creation and destruction, with souls reincarnating across ages. If a time traveler disrupted their lineage, could karma adjust their rebirth to preserve cosmic balance? The Mahabharata contains eerie proto-time travel stories like King Kakudmi's journey to heaven, where minutes span earthly centuries, hinting that time's flow is malleable under divine will. Buddhism's doctrine of dependent origination, where all phenomena arise from causes, might interpret the grandfather dilemma as a lesson in interconnectedness. Tampering with one thread risks unraveling the whole web of existence, reinforcing the need to transcend desire rather than rewrite reality. Jewish thought, particularly Kabbalah, introduces a mystical dimension. The Sephirot divine emanations include hod glory, associated with prophecy and the bending of time. Some Kabbalists propose that holy individuals could access timeless states, glimpsing futures that influence their present actions, a bootstrap paradox sanctified by faith. Yet the Talmud also warns against probing mysteries that are beyond you, suggesting temporal meddling might violate sacred boundaries. The grandfather paradox here becomes a moral caution. Even if time travel were possible, humanity's role isn't to usurp divine timing but to partner in Tikkun Olam, repairing the world within our ordained moment. Indigenous spiritualities often view time as a spiraling conversation between ancestors and descendants. For the Maori, disrupting the past wouldn't just risk personal erasure, it could sever the Wakapapa genealogical ties that bind the living to their forebears and land. In Navajo cosmology, where harmony with natural order is paramount, time travel might be seen as Hojo balance disrupted, demanding rituals to restore equilibrium. These perspectives frame the paradox not as a logic puzzle but as a violation of relational ethics, where tampering with lineage fractures communal identity. Across these traditions, a unifying thread emerges. The grandfather paradox forces a reckoning with humility. Whether through predestination, karma, or divine will, faith systems suggest that time isn't a tool for human mastery but a dimension of sacred order. The paradox's true power might lie not in proving time travel impossible, but in reminding us that some boundaries between past and future, cause and effect, exist to cultivate reverence, not defiance. After all, if we could rewrite history, would we still need faith to navigate its mysteries? If time travel ever becomes a reality, humanity will need something far more robust than a user manual. We'll need a survival guide for not erasing ourselves from existence. So let's draft some ground rules fueled by equal parts quantum physics and sheer self-preservation instinct. First, the golden rule: never ever high-five your ancestors. It might be tempting to congratulate your great-great-grandfather on his impeccable mustache, but even a casual touch could redirect his life path just enough to derail your entire bloodline. Think of it like cosmic Jenga. You might pull the wrong block without even realizing it. Instead, adopt the ghost protocol, observe from a safe distance, resist the urge to interfere, and for heaven's sake, don't leave selfies carved into ancient monuments. Future archaeologists don't need to find your TikTok handle etched into the pyramids. Next, master the art of temporal small talk. If you absolutely must interact with the past, stick to universally safe topics like the weather. Complaining about rain in 18th century London won't rewrite history, but offering stock tips to a young Warren Buffett, that's how you accidentally collapse the global economy. And never, under any circumstances, reveal future knowledge. Even innocently mentioning penicillin to a medieval doctor could trigger a butterfly effect that replaces modern medicine with something far worse. The past is not your LinkedIn network. Some connections are better left unmade. Clothing choices matter too. Blend in. Showing up in a neon tracksuit at the signing of the Declaration of Independence isn't just a fashion crime, it's a causality violation waiting to happen. Invest in period-accurate wardrobe, but avoid fabrics or dyes that haven't been invented yet. The last thing you want is to spark a textile revolution because someone in the Renaissance mistook your synthetic fibers for witchcraft. And let's talk souvenirs. Collecting mementos sounds harmless until you realize that pocketing a seemingly insignificant artifact, like a tavern matchbook, might have been the very item your ancestor needed to light the lantern that saved them from a fatal carriage accident. Instead, follow the museum mantra, look, don't take. If you must bring something back, make it intangible memories, sketches, or a newfound appreciation for indoor plumbing. Finally, establish a fail-safe for existential crises. If you suspect you've already altered history, don't panic. Run a quick reality check. Are your childhood photos still on the wall? Does your name appear in any records? If yes, breathe easy. If no, well, enjoy your new life as a paradox ghost. Just remember, the past is a fragile ecosystem. Treat it with the same caution you'd use around a room full of sleeping bears holding dynamite, because in the end, time travel isn't about rewriting history, it's about surviving it. And maybe, just maybe, resisting the urge to bet on every Super Bowl winner since 1967. Some temptations aren't worth the timeline. Einstein's relationship with time travel was a paradox in itself. He gave us the math that made it theoretically possible, then spent his career quietly convinced nature would never allow it. His theory of general relativity reshaped our understanding of time as a flexible dimension, warped by gravity and motion. Equations describing wormholes and closed time-like curves emerged naturally from his work, suggesting pathways to the past. Yet Einstein recoiled from the implications, calling the idea disturbing. To him, the grandfather paradox wasn't just a puzzle, it was proof the universe had safeguards. He believed causality was the bedrock of reality, writing that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. If time travel violated that order, he argued, the cosmos would find a way to prevent it even if the how remained hidden in the math. Stephen Hawking took a more mischievous approach. He famously hosted a champagne party for time travelers in 1991, but sent the invitations after the event. His logic, if future humans could hop through time, why hadn't they shown up to iconic moments like his party? The empty chairs, he joked, were evidence time travel was impossible. Yet Hawking's actual research told a subtler story. His chronology protection conjecture proposed quantum effects like virtual particles flooding a wormhole might destabilize time machines before they could form. It wasn't an outright ban, but a cosmic keep-out sign scribbled in the fine print of physics. Still, Hawking left cracks in his own argument. He mused that advanced civilizations might find loopholes, perhaps by threading wormholes with negative energy. His final stance: time travel might be possible but not practical. A tease wrapped in equations. Then there's Kip Thorne, the Nobel laureate who consulted on Interstellar and turned wormholes into household conversation. Unlike Einstein's unease, Thorne embraced time travel's messy implications. His work showed how traversable wormholes could, in theory, function as time machines if their mouths moved at relativistic speeds. But he confronted the grandfather paradox head-on, arguing nature would enforce self-consistency through probability forces. In Thorne's model, the universe plays probability like a rigged game. If you tried to shoot your grandfather, the gun would jam, your aim would falter, or quantum noise would deflect the bullet. Reality, in his view, isn't fragile, it's stubbornly self-correcting. Richard Feynman brought quantum weirdness to the party. His path integral formulation suggested particles explore all possible histories simultaneously, weighting them by probability. Apply this to time travel, and paradoxes might resolve through branching paths, a precursor to many worlds thinking. Feynman's playful irreverence masked deep insight. If time is just another dimension, why should moving backward be any stranger than moving left or right? His work hinted that the paradox might stem from our limited perspective, not the universe's rules. The real outlier was Kurt Gödel, Einstein's Princeton colleague who discovered rotating universe solutions where time loops back on itself. In Gödel's cosmos, you could journey to the past without wormholes or machines, just by traveling far enough through a spinning spacetime. Einstein called the math disturbingly beautiful, but rejected its physical reality. Gödel, ever the provocateur, saw it as proof time might be an illusion altogether. His twist: if the universe allows time travel, then time as we understand it, a linear sequence of causes and effects, might not exist at all. What unites these giants isn't consensus, but a shared recognition. The grandfather paradox isn't just a sci-fi plot hole. It's a crack in reality's facade, hinting at deeper laws we've yet to uncover. Einstein trusted causality too much to embrace time travel. Hawking bet against it but left room for wonder. Thorne and Feynman saw elasticity where others saw walls. And Gödel, he handed us a hall of mirrors and dared us to look closer. Their debates didn't solve the paradox, they proved why it matters. Because if time can bend, break, or blink out of existence, what else about reality might be up for grabs? The quest to crack time travel's greatest mysteries isn't confined to thought experiments. Labs worldwide are pushing the boundaries of physics in ways that could one day turn paradoxes into practical problems. One frontier lies in quantum gravity research, where scientists aim to unify Einstein's general relativity with quantum mechanics. These theories clash spectacularly at the Planck scale, the realm of black holes and the Big Bang, precisely where wormholes, if they exist, might form. Teams at institutions like the Perimeter Institute are simulating space-time foam, a quantum froth where microscopic tunnels could flicker in and out of existence. If controlled, these fleeting structures might be stabilized into bridges across time, though the energy requirements remain astronomical. Another promising avenue is quantum entanglement's temporal cousin, post-selection. In this mind-bending protocol, particles are manipulated so their interactions in the present seem to choose outcomes that retroactively avoid paradoxes. Think of it as the universe editing its own timeline on the fly. Researchers at the University of Queensland have already demonstrated this in tabletop experiments, where photon interactions appear to self-correct to prevent causal inconsistencies. Scale this up, and you've got a blueprint for paradox-resistant time travel, nature itself ensuring you can't shoot your grandfather because the bullet was never in the chamber to begin with. Meanwhile, CERN Large Hadron Collider isn't just hunting particles, it's probing the fabric of causality. By smashing protons at near-light speeds, physicists create conditions where time dilation effects mimic miniature time loops. No one's expecting a time machine to emerge from the wreckage, but these collisions could reveal whether exotic matter, the negative energy stuff needed to prop open wormholes, is even theoretically possible. The catch: even a speck of such matter would require harvesting energy from every star in the Milky Way. Then there's the wild card, emergent spacetime theory. If time isn't fundamental but arises from deeper quantum interactions like temperature emerging from atomic motion, tampering with it might be like rewriting the rules of a simulation from the inside. Google's Quantum AI Lab is testing this by modeling spacetime as a quantum error-correcting code, a system where paradoxes literally appear as glitches the universe fixes automatically. The implications are staggering. Time travel might not break physics because physics is built to self-repair. And let's not forget the cosmic detectives scouring the skies for evidence of time travelers. Astronomers analyzing patterns in gamma-ray bursts, the universe's most energetic explosions, are hunting for anomalies that could betray artificial manipulation. After all, if you had time travel, wouldn't you use it to witness the birth of a neutron star? Projects like the Breakthrough Listen initiative even include temporal signatures in their search for extraterrestrial intelligence, betting that advanced civilizations might leave chronological breadcrumbs. What unites these disparate efforts is a shift in perspective. Scientists are no longer asking if paradoxes can be resolved, but how the universe might already be resolving them. From quantum networks to cosmic rays, every experiment chips away at the illusion that time is a one-way street and brings us closer to the day when the grandfather paradox isn't a deal-breaker, but just another equation waiting to be balanced. From self-correcting timelines to infinite parallel realities, the grandfather paradox has forced us to confront the wildest edges of physics, philosophy, and human imagination. We've seen how Novikov's principle turns the universe into an editor, meticulously preserving consistency like a cosmic autosave function. Quantum mechanics offers escape hatches through probability clouds and branching worlds, while the block universe model suggests the whole debate might be missing the point. If past, present, and future are equally real, there's nothing to change at all. Every proposed solution dazzles with intellectual creativity, yet each leaves unanswered questions dangling like loose threads in spacetime itself. What makes this paradox endure as science's ultimate brain teaser isn't just the technical conundrum, it's how it mirrors our deepest existential anxieties. The fear of erasure, the illusion of control, the haunting possibility that our choices might be scripts we're powerless to rewrite. Whether through predestination loops or multiverse branches, every interpretation forces us to reconsider what it means to exist in a universe where cause and effect might be more fluid than we ever imagined. Theoretical physicists still spar over equations that could resolve the paradox, while philosophers wrestle with its implications for free will. After centuries of debate, we're left with something far more fascinating than an answer, an ongoing conversation that stretches across disciplines, media, and cultures. So where do you stand in this labyrinth of possibilities? Do you find comfort in the universe's self-correcting mechanisms, or does the idea of predestination leave you uneasy? Are you team multiverse, where every choice spawns new realities, or does the block universe's frozen eternity resonate more deeply? The beauty of the grandfather paradox is that it remains gloriously unresolved, a playground for thinkers, dreamers, and anyone who's ever wondered what would happen if we could rewrite history. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's keep this timeless debate alive, because in the end, the paradox isn't just about time travel. It's about understanding the very fabric of reality, one mind bending possibility at a time.